Hey everybody, it is Liv from A Bolder Woman Speaks. We are super excited for today's show. Man, listen, if you know anything about A Bolder Woman Speaks, we are here to help build up the confidence of our sisters. We help them amplify their voices and their faith by sharing testimonies, right? We're all about pursuing God, having purpose in God, and seeking God, okay, in every area of our life, and most importantly, having more life, okay? Because Jesus called us to have more life and more life abundantly. And so tune into this show today. I have an amazing guest. Make sure you like, make sure you share, make sure you subscribe, and make sure you stay tuned. All right, I'm going to bring up our guest. Okay, everybody. So I'm bringing up, or actually, she's already up, Apostle Shelby Fredrick. I'm super duper excited to have you on this show. It's just so amazing to have you here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. How are you?
Thank you so much, first of all, for the invitation. It is an honor to be here with you. I am doing just so well. I'm doing very, very well and just delighted to be here to share on today.
Awesome. Well, we are happy to have you. It was so necessary for us to have you on the show because everything that you do, everything that you are embodies everything that we are creating our foundation on here at A Bolder Woman, all about health, emotional wellness, just the wellness of even spiritual leaders. And so we just had to have you here. So thank you again.
Oh,
You
you're
guys, I just
welcome.
want to thank you. I just want to welcome you guys again on this show. And I want to give a little bit of background about Shelby. So I'm going to read just a short bio. This she probably could have sent me several pages, but she did send me a very short insert of who she is. And so Shelby is a renowned speaker, coach, and trainer whose passion for mental health, with an emphasis on emotional wellness, purposeful leadership, and spiritual growth, is transforming lives and organizations with a dynamic approach that blends professional expertise with profound spiritual insights. Shelby stands as a guiding light for those seeking to navigate the complexities of personal and professional life with wisdom and grace. And y'all, that is exactly who she is. So please just sit back, get you some popcorn, get you a mocktail, okay, and just go on this journey with us. So
Yes, yes.
so yes. So, what when I asked you kind of like a little bit about what you kind of felt led to talk about, you gave me this dynamic title, and I'm like, I'm ready to get into it. Okay. And so today we're actually going to be talking about the straight jacket of mistaken identity. All right.
Yes,
And so
yes.
I want to get into that. Really, I do. And so we're going to start there. All right.
Okay,
Um,
sure.
tell me Tell me about the heart of your story. What does that title even mean to you?
Well, the heart of the story and actually how it came about was I had came through a process and a journey of really coming into my identity and looking at my life and peeling back some of the layers. And I immediately felt like I was in this straight jacket. And being a preacher's kid, a PK, and always feeling like I had to live up to the expectations, of other people. And you'll often hear me say like church folk or, just religious environments. Um, I found that that's what I felt like. I felt constricted. I felt restricted. And I want to give this definition of straitjacket because it was so very profound. But one of the definitions, and then I believe this is in the Cambridge Dictionary, is that a straitjacket is something that severely limits development or activity in a way that is damaging.
Mm-mm-mm.
And that's what I felt. That's what I felt. And so the premise of the straitjacket of mistaken identity really stems from a time where I went into the military, was born and raised in the church. My dad was a pastor, and I went away to the military when I was 20 years old. And, this is like the first taste of freedom.
Mhm.
And in this taste of freedom, I was doing everything that was under the sun, everything that I wanted to do, everything that I felt restricted just from being a young person. and always being under the microscope of people, I just was literally, I was living it up, and I lived it up. And I found myself pregnant. And
Mm,
the ironic thing about this pregnancy was that, I was involved in a long distance relationship, but that wasn't who I eventually found out that I was pregnant by.
okay.
And just that harrowing experience brought me smack dab to reality of what are you doing
Mm,
and who am I really?
mm-hmm.
And it was through that. That's where really my story really stems from, is that one encounter, because so many things came from out of that. But that's where the straitjacket of mistaken identity really stems from, that part of my story.
Wow, 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 wow. And so I kind of want to stay there for just a second, right?
Yes.
You talk about being a PK and going into the military and just kind of living it up, moving out of what those expectations were, right? As
Hmm. Yes.
a preacher's kid, and
Yes.
now just living this life. And so you were kind of stricken with this place where you were now pregnant
Hmm.
and you didn't know. You're like, wait, this, who am I really? Because I knew this person over here and now I'm
Yes.
living this up right here. But
Hmm.
at some point you emerged out of that place. You had to, because you're here,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
when I think about straight jacket, I think of somebody who's here, but at some point
Hmm.
you broke free,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
what was that point when you like broke free from that straight jacket? What was that like?
Well, breaking it was a process, and it was a journey that really happened over a period of years. The first part of that was when I found out that I was pregnant, I was actually like 12 weeks. Um,
Oh, wow.
12. Well, no, it was 12 weeks. I was like, something about this is not right. And I was in
Yeah.
the military, I was in the Navy, and we were making a transition from one place in the shipyard in Louisiana to our home port in Hawaii. And so during this period of time, I did see the guy that I was dating in a relationship with. And so, but it was like by the time I got to Hawaii, I was like, wait a minute, like things still just are not right. So let me go and just check and make sure, and true enough, I did. I found out that I was like 3 months pregnant by
Wow.
this time, and was completely horrified. Um, I It took me like a week to tell my parents,
Hmm.
because it was just like, oh my God, like how am I going to tell them this? And how am I going to tell them the backdrop of,
Right.
of all the other stuff that went along with the story. And so actually ended up having a miscarriage, or giving birth when I was 19 and a half weeks pregnant. And I literally had to go through a birthing process of knowing that I was the baby that I was birthing was dead.
Wow. Wow.
So a very traumatic, when I say traumatic, it was very traumatic. I was in Hawaii. I was by myself. My parents couldn't get to me, and all I had was just my sister friends, that I was stationed with. And thank God for them. They were there with me through the process until I was able to fly home to recuperate. And so it was during that period of time of losing the baby and going home, not knowing if I was still going to be in a relationship, with the person that I had been in a long distance relationship with, going through all of those different emotions and transitions. And it wasn't until, I would say, maybe like around, because I had the miscarriage in January of 1992. It was like around March where I was like, you know what? I've got to get this together.
Hmm.
It was like I came to myself.
Yeah.
And in coming to myself, I started going back to chapel services, on the base. And
Hmm.
it was in that moment, I remember walking one day to chapel and just having this conversation with the Lord. And I said, God, I don't know how I got here, but I know that this is not what you have willed for my life.
Right.
And it was in those moments that I would say a journey in a journey of many years, that brought me to that place of, you know what, I am breaking out of this
Hmm.
straitjacket,
Yeah.
out of the expectations of people, out of what people think that I should even be doing, even
Yeah.
professionally. There was always just a lot of pressure and a
Yeah.
lot of things of people thinking that you should do this or you should do that.
Yeah.
And it was still many years of going through that process. But that was the beginning of it, is walking to chapel in March of 1992. And I
Okay.
said, you know what? Enough is enough of this. That began the process.
Got it. Wow. When you were talking about that, that made me think about Saul and how Saul was on the road to Damascus,
Yes.
and how he just had that revelatory moment, his eyes
Mhm.
open, awakening. Well, they were
Yes.
shut in order to be open, right?
Hmm.
And it was like his mistaken identity was now, he was now catapulted into his real identity out of a mistaken identity. And so you talk about being a preacher's kid and having to deal with this conformity of being this particular way or having these levels of expectations. So I can only imagine that there was a level of shame that tried to
Oh,
grip you, that you had
yes.
to heal from, right? Because here you
Yes.
are, you're a preacher's kid in the Navy, and they're expecting you to live like this and have all this level of success and mirror the image of God, but you're like, wait, who am I really? You know?
Yes.
So
Hmm.
what was the process? And I know this is probably this could probably be several shows answering this type of question. But
Yeah.
what was the process of you breaking free of the shame, and the of an expectation of who you were called to be? Like, what was that like? Like, how did you come into? Well, let me stay there, because that could be two different questions. But how did you break free of the shame?
Breaking free from the shame really took me, and again, I would say the shame part of it came, I would say, around year 20 2009, somewhere around 2009.
Hmm.
I began to really seek my identity. And because of different things that I was experiencing, like even like within my marriage, things I was experiencing in ministry, I realized I started to notice like this thing of shame, and not really wanting to come forward, or feeling like I was held back because I really don't want people to know my story. I really don't want anybody to know
Yeah.
that I've gone through this experience. I didn't want people to know that I was out there, up there clubbing it up,
Right.
out there, fornicating, having sex. And then not only that, but was in a
Right.
relationship, in a long distance relationship, but being pregnant by, someone else. Like, so it's like you have that thing, like, oh my God, people are going to really think that I'm, just out here on the
Mhm.
streets. I'm not the preacher's daughter. But it was a real place. And I really, another part of being in the straitjacket, I felt like I was wrapped like a mummy.
Mm,
And so
okay.
I had to go through this process of pulling off all of those layers and all of those things that I felt like, and it wasn't like these things were coming from my parents. It wasn't coming from my parents, but it was the environment
Yeah.
that I grew up in. And it was just like, there is no way in the world that I am going to be telling anybody. So I just felt shame.
Yeah.
I felt that shame, and I felt condemned. But a lot of that was my own self-condemnation. I was condemning myself because it wasn't like I didn't know better. I
Right.
knew better, but I
Yeah.
just got caught up.
You
Yeah.
you caught up, and I think that tends to happen to us all, right? That
Mhm.
caught up gets the best of us, right?
Oh, yes.
It's that little voice in our ear telling us something that we know better than to
Mhm.
believe, but we still
Mhm.
believe it anyway, because the way we
Right.
feel about ourselves and the way we look at ourselves in
Mhm.
that moment, and so we
Yes.
just get wrapped up in it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My self-esteem was so very low.
Mhm.
And that played a major part, of staying stuck, behind that shame for so long. And it just was a process to get to, like, you know what, I've got to break out of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so, knowing a little bit about the background of this story and knowing really kind of the title and where we're going with this, I believe there's a very pivotal part to this that
Mhm.
helps you transition or thrust you into
Yes.
another place. And
Mhm.
that is the part where you say you were literally going on a journey from being a preacher's kid, or I like to say it the way you said it. You said a PK to a KP, and I'm gonna let you
Yes.
explain that. I want you to explain that to the viewers.
Yes. So the interesting part of that, was when I began to walk out of the religious structure, the religious mindset, even the denomination that I was in. I thank God for my foundation. I know that I would not be who I am today if I did not have that. But there was so much more that God had for me, and I didn't see anything like what God was revealing to me about who I was. I didn't see that in the places and the spaces where I grew up. And so the Lord led me out of that, and it was when I began to learn and to understand, about the kingdom. And I want to share this particular scripture because it wasn't until I was kind of preparing for this interview that I was like, oh, that's really what that was. But in Matthew chapter 11, verse 12, and this is the King James. I'll just read it from there. But it says, and from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffereth violence, and the violent take it by force. You see, when you are in a religious construct, that spirit of religion does not want to see you be set free. And it wasn't until I began to study about the kingdom that I understood, or I began to learn about what did it mean for me to be a king priest. Where did that come from? What is this talking about? And it wasn't until I began to understand that I was so much more than just what religion had told me that who I was, but what I can be and who I can be and how I'm supposed to show up in the earth and how I'm supposed to go forth. It wasn't until that revelation that I began to make that pivot. And it really sent me just further on into this journey of really and truly knowing who I was.
Wow, I love that. I love that. Man, that is so good. I feel like that part right there literally puts this. I mean, we still got a little ways to go, right? There's so much I need to know, so much I want to unpack, but I feel like that part right there really brings everything full circle because I mean, so often we are confined in that straitjacket and we think
Mhm.
God can only use us in this one place,
Yes.
right? And we don't recognize that when God says that I use all things for the good of those who love me and are called according to my purpose, like He means
Mhm.
that.
Yes, he
Literally,
does.
He means
Yes,
that.
he
And
does.
when we lock God into a box, right, we hinder His ability and His flow to move into other dynamics of our life and use us in other capacities, right? Like
Absolutely.
imagine you being a preacher's kid and thinking the only place that God could use you was just in that one place. And that means
Mhm.
the only testimonies that you could give could only look like this level of testimony,
Yes, yes,
right?
absolutely. Mhm.
But going from just being okay, this was my stamp, this was my foundation to this is who I really am in God
Yes.
allowed you to really say, you know what, like I'm not just this, I'm this. And
Yes.
my identity is in Him, and He can use me in
Mhm.
any way. And so I just find that so profound. I find it beautiful for God to begin to unlock your identity in that way. And I feel like it's not just
Absolutely.
your identity being unlocked; it's
Mhm.
everybody's identity being unlocked because that's what He called us
Yes.
all. He called
Absolutely.
us all to be king priests. So thank you for sharing
Yes.
that.
You're so welcome. You're
Yeah,
welcome.
that's amazing. Um,
Mm.
and so in that, like, tell me, I want to go here because I kind of want to stay in there for just a second. Like when I think about even operating in king priest model, I mean king priest, like the kingdom of God, actually being
Yes.
that and moving in that level of identity. What does that look like? Because there are people who don't know. There are people that
Mhm.
don't know, like you spent this level of this for your identity, but like in Christ, in this in the marketplace. Let's talk about that because
Mhm.
a lot of what you do
Sure.
is in the marketplace, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of what you do is operating in what you the I always say the greatest issue that you struggle with is also the area that God is calling us to, and so you
Absolutely.
operate there. So
Mhm.
let's talk about that operation and what you're currently doing.
So, what I'm currently doing, well, I would say that for the past 16 years, and it may be seven, I think that this year may make 17 years. I am a licensed massage therapist, and so um, that really catapulted and really formed the foundation of me understanding and really learning about health and wellness and going into the essential oils and different things of that nature. That really was the foundation and the base. And so um, with the pandemic, because we were, under orders, where we could not, we weren't seeing clients. At that time, I was working from home. I had people coming to my home in my home office. That really began a shift and transition for me to really move more into coaching and the counseling, even though I had started counseling and did my certification back in 2016. I've been
Mhm.
able to take all of those and really begin to create this niche in the marketplace of talking about emotional wellness, talking about self care. And the latest, really looking at the 8 dimensions of wellness, because my mindset is that when we minister or when we are serving people, that we serve and we minister to the whole man. And
Absolutely.
when we leave out one area, and this I'm talking spirit, soul, and body, when we leave out one area, then we leave that person really kind of fractured. We leave them at a deficit. And so that is always my mindset. Now, of course, when you're in the marketplace, depending upon where you go, I believe I don't believe that I've been in any spaces where people did not know that I was a Christian, a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ. But sometimes, how we communicate, whoever your higher power is, that
Mhm.
allows people to still connect with what it is and the message that I'm coming to bring. And that is that there is healing in every area of our lives, spirit, soul, and body. And
Yeah.
so he allows me to create programs and curriculums and trainings with that thought in mind, that I'm not just talking to a group of people that is one dimensional. We are multidimensional, just as God is, and we're coming in spirit, soul, and body.
Yeah, yeah, that's so good. So I'm gonna say this real quick,
Mhm.
and you can elaborate or you don't have to elaborate, but you have a healing and deliverance ministry.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah.
I had to say that because I think some people sometimes don't see how the translation happens over in the
Oh,
marketplace, you know?
Let me tell you, when there would be times and my clients will tell you, there would be times where I would be working on people, and either the Lord would begin to speak prophetically. Of course, I'm not saying thus said the Lord or anything like that. No, I'm just
Right.
talking, it's regular conversation, but it
Yeah.
really is the Lord that is speaking to them. Or, they would be like, your hands are so warm.
Mm.
Do you have a warmer? And it's like, no, I don't have a warmer. And I kind of chuckle, to myself,
Yeah.
because I know what it is. I
Right.
know that it is the healing power of God. But
Sure.
he has really taught me a way of healing and deliverance, um, that is so very unique that regardless of what space I'm in,
Mhm.
it's going to manifest itself.
Yeah.
And, you know, then in having conversation with people, we can come in. But if the need is that a person is in need of healing, then God
Hmm.
is going to bring that forth in that way. And then anything else that happens, that's, hey, we're just going to roll with God. But absolutely, it's not. as orthodox as maybe what some other people's healing and deliverance ministry looks like.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be. And I love it. And I love how
Yes,
God
yes.
uses your own unique abilities to
Hmm.
wire you the way He needs you to be used for the people that
Absolutely.
He used for. So that's amazing.
Yes, yes,
Um,
absolutely.
so in all of that, how did your personal experiences, your breakthrough, your final understanding of your identity, and it's progressive, understanding your identity is progressive, but how did that begin to open up to getting you to this place here with how you're helping people become whole?
I would say that one of the main things is I often had to heal in the same places where I was hurt.
Hmm.
And so for me, creating safe spaces is very, very important for me
Hmm.
because I understand that when people feel that they are safe, where there is transparency, where you're not going to allow anyone to cause them further hurt or harm, it becomes very impactful and very transformational for these environments, that are created. And so that has been, I believe, very instrumental to the work that God has called me to, and that's by creating those safe, no judgment zones. So, however it is, however you show up, hey, that's what we're rolling with
Yeah.
because I understand that that is what God is ready to heal.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Because even as you said, I think back about just how we started this interview and how it just seems like you're being what you needed.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yes, yes,
Yeah, I love it. It's like
mhm,
God just ran it back real quick. Like, I'm gonna
yes,
put this back in. I'm
hmm,
gonna use it. That's so good.
yes,
That really is good. So, okay, so you do these healing circles, right?
yes,
Um, and I love that because there's actually places that are counterfeit that do healing circles that ain't
yes.
right.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so your healing circles focus on removing the muzzle of shame, right? Like, so
Hmm.
how tell me about these circles that you do, and how your journey of finding your voice helps others overcome their traumas through these resources.
Yes. So we first did I first did the healing circle. I believe it might have been like during the pandemic, and we were actually online, and I just kind of put it out there, and I listed, several things, hey, if you're dealing with this, come into this session with us. And I know for me, finding my voice was so very important. It was an important part of the process, um, because I realized that I was, again, not just in a straitjacket, but I felt like I was wrapped up like a mummy,
Mm,
and almost like having a hand over your voice, like you better not say that. People are going to look at you. People are going to think this about you.
right.
But when I recognize the power of speaking, the power of my voice to communicate, that I don't have to um, submit myself to those thoughts of other people, and what they may say, or how they may be feeling, or how they may think towards me, that I really do have a voice, and what I have to say, it matters. It's
Hmm.
important that my voice literally is a key to unlock someone else who does not know or understand the power of their own voice. And so with the healing circles, it allows us to walk through and really to identify, where did your voice get locked up at?
Mm.
And usually that's somewhere in our childhood.
Yep.
I know for me, that's where it was. And I would have never in a million years thought that this one incident, which I'll share quickly. I was about 4 years old, and I was outside playing with a neighbor. This was in the summertime. I remember I had on a yellow sundress, and it was sunny outside. It was summer. And I was always talking. I was always that talkative child, always had something to say. And I must have said something to her that made her angry or upset, and she pushed me down and it knocked the wind out of me.
Mm.
I was
Mm.
4 years old.
Wow.
And it wasn't until I went to write my first book and I was in a certification class and we were going through, this process, and that memory was what came up for me. And I
Wow.
would have never even thought that. Never thought that it related to that. And it was at that moment because from that time on, then it was like, shut up.
Right.
Nobody wants to hear what you have to say.
Wow.
I lived with that for so many years. That was a part of the shame as well. That was a part of the of me not being able to really express myself because I felt like, well, nobody really wants to hear what I have to say,
Mhm.
and it's not important, or you talk too much, or you're such an overachiever,
Mhm.
just all of the things that people say. And I've actually had people to vocalize these things to
Yeah.
me, and it was just like, okay, well, what, I'm just going to just be quiet, or maybe I just don't want
Yeah.
to, I don't want to say that. And it really hindered, even when it comes to the prophetic. It was
Yeah.
such a hindrance because I would be so nervous and afraid. Like, I hear God telling me to go tell this person here,
Yeah.
this, that, and the other. And it was like, God, you must be crazy. I'm not going down there to say nothing in front of all of these people. Are you kidding
Mhm.
me? And I would watch someone go to that person, and the Lord will, do his work. And I would just feel so like, oh my
Yep.
God, that was really you that was speaking to me.
Yeah.
And so it impacted every area of my life to the point where I felt like I always had to dummy down.
Mm-mm-mm-mm. That's a whole nother conversation, but that's so good. I was
I had to, and it was like, wait a minute, why am I dummying down when this is who God has created me to be?
that part.
Why am I not speaking? Why am I not sharing when I know that this is a key that is going to unlock someone else's destiny? And so
Wow.
for me, it was very eye-opening, to go through this experience in this process. But for me, and this is what healing circles really is all about. We've got to deal with the shame. We've got to deal with these muzzles, sometimes that we've put on ourselves, that we won't
Yes.
speak.
Yep.
And so this is really what healing circles is all about, bringing people into a safe space, a safe environment, so that they can deal with some of those issues that have kept them bound.
That is so good. You said so much in there. I just wish I could touch on everything. But something I caught something when you said it multiple times, but this time around when you said it, when you talk about being mummified, I just was thinking about if you're mummified, there's something that's dying.
Yes.
There's something that's dying. And I'm thinking about
Hmm.
every time you compare yourself to somebody else, there's something that's
Yes.
dying. Every
Hmm.
time you decide not to say what God has said, your confidence is shot and hit, and now
Yes.
there's something that's dying, you know?
Hmm.
Every time you let that trauma
Yeah.
overcome, who God has said that you are, there's something that
Hmm.
is dying. And so that
Yes.
just made me think about like it really is so necessary to become unmummified so that what God has
Yes.
he put you in this world for a reason. He looked at you and he called you good. He ain't say I looked at you and I called you dead. Right? There was
No.
something that he has said that
Hmm.
trying to get out of you because there's a level in you that you can deposit into the atmosphere that's valuable. And I
Yes.
feel like
Yes.
I wrote in a book, it was one book, some book I wrote, I don't know, but I was talking about how from the time I was a child, the enemy had always been after me. Always been after me. And a lot of time
Mhm.
that is usually it. And if he can't get you, then there's gonna be some level of your
Mhm.
life, if you don't know who you are in God,
Come
that's gonna
on.
lock you up,
That's
right?
right.
Gonna try to
Mhm.
throw away the kid. It's gonna try to muzzle you because there's something. And you say muzzle. I love that word because I always talk about how the enemy tries to muzzle and mute us because
Mhm.
there's power in our mouth.
Yes.
Right? There's a frequency that we
Mhm.
release when we speak. There are people called to our sound, and when we
Yes.
and speak something, that one word can spark something. You just said something that
Mhm.
unlocked in me in that moment. You
My
said something,
God.
like, oh, I'll start thinking about that. And so it's
Mhm.
so imperative. And I thank you so much for sharing that because I know there's somebody that's going to be watching this or that's watching that's
My
like, wait a
God.
minute, I need to,
Mhm.
what, that's me. That's me.
Yes.
The enemy's muzzled me, and man, I've been mummified, and there's something I feel
Mhm.
like I'm dying. I feel like I
Mhm.
keep shrinking back, but it all goes back to understanding what not no fake identity, not your
Come
false
on.
identity, but
Mhm.
your real identity. And there,
Real.
identity
Yes.
is there's levels. There's inherent identity. There is
Mhm.
innate identity. What did God call you? But ultimately, who are you in Him? Right?
Yes.
And so that was
Mhm.
so good, man. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that just
Yeah.
again because it's so good. Um, and so I'm gonna say this because I really believe that you have something else to share, for those that have maybe dealt with, being preachers' kids, or
Mm.
dealt with
Mhm.
feeling like they had to look a certain way and they were grappling with the shame of it, and they've let trauma pursue them and overcome
Mhm.
them, even in the midst of God
Mhm.
saying that you're victorious. I feel like you have something to say to them, right? And so give me, and what can you leave with those who have felt hopeless, those who need some encouragement, who have maybe dealt with some of the things that you have been dealing with or dealt with throughout your journey?
Right. Well, the first thing that I want to say in encouraging those who are PKs, and if there are any PK parents that are listening, please allow your children to form their own identity. I can't say that enough. Allow them. What is it? Go to God concerning your children, because just because you were called to the pulpit does not, inside of the four walls of a building, the four walls of a church, does not mean that your child is going to be your successor preaching in a pulpit in the four walls. He may have them pastoring in the marketplace. And if you are a PK and you felt like you just had to live up to all of these expectations because it did not look like what you grew up in, free yourself today. Find out, go to God and allow Him to show you your identity. Show you where you are called. If you're called to pastor, if you're called to the fivefold, whatever it may be, whatever that is, seek the Lord and get there quickly, because it is in that place that really the blessings of the Lord begin to open up over your lives. Don't allow yourself to be bound by other people's their thoughts and their opinions. Never allow anybody to put you in a box. There was one box that you were birthed in, and that's the box of the womb of your mother. Once you came out, that was it. No more boxes. Your identity has already been sealed. Your DNA has been already encoded. So seek the Father. And if you don't, hey, well, maybe you don't know God like that, then find a trusted mentor. I thank God for my mentor. She's now my spiritual mother, Dr. Yolanda Powell. She came along at a very critical point in my life that helped me to walk through these pieces and to really come from out of that the mummy wraps, to come out of that straitjacket, a mistaken identity. And I'm just forever grateful to God that He has people who know how to walk us through those processes. And that's just something that God has just graced me to do in the area of this mental health, emotional wellness, and healing and deliverance. That's really what it's all about. But that would be my encouragement, that if you don't know how to do it yourself, or you need help and assistance, then ask the Lord to send you to the person that will walk with you through this process.
Wow.
Amen.
Amen. I was back there like, yeah, yeah, come on, say that. Wow, thank you. That was so good, man. That was so good, Apostle Shelby. I thank you so much for those gems that you dropped. And speaking of gems, where can people find you?
Yes, you can find me at www.jewelsofwellness.net, or also on my link page is shelbyfrederick.com. Those are the two places that you can find me and keep up and to follow along with all that we have going on.
Amen. Thank you. Make sure you go follow Lady Jules on all her
Yes.
platforms. She's dropping something amazing every day, consistently. Okay, she will never fail in that regard. So we thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for
Thank you
giving
for
all
having
that you gave. Continue to do the work of the Lord. We know that you will, and you
me.
just have a
Amen.
beautiful and blessed day.
Thank you. Same
Thank
to
you.
you. God bless.
Bye. God bless you.